Many of you know that before I was a priest, I was a religion teacher in a Catholic high school in Boston. And one of the classes that I was assigned to teach was comparative world religions. Kids studied all the religions of the world, which was a fascinating thing to do. And the way to make that really fruitful is to first figure out what are the categories of things that all religions have. Do they have? And so there was a religious scholar who said that in order to be a religion, you really needed to at least have these 5 things. You needed to have rituals. You needed to have symbols. You needed to have rules for how a person should live, an ethical code of some sort. You should have sacred writings, and you should have beliefs. Pretty basic ingredients that go into any religion. Those beliefs are not only about how people should live, but about where we came from. Where did the world come from? So one of the things we would do in that course is give students the chance to do something very unusual and creative. They had to build a religion from scratch. They had to figure out what are the parts of the religion that need to be covered, and then to come up with things to cover. And of course, these were high school students. So there was a video game religion, and there was a religion where it was against the commandments to eat vegetables. Now, some parents naturally might have worried, what are you teaching my kids? What if my kids wind up making a religion that they want to follow? What if they wind up worshiping someone who doesn't deserve to be worshiped? And of course, understandable response, but it's the exact opposite that happens. When you have kids do that, they realize, I can't worship some rapper. They realize, I can't worship a celebrity. They start to realize that religion, in order to be valid, needs to be based in what is essential. Not the extra things in life, not the passing fads. And that's exactly what we're hearing in the readings today, because these are from the earliest time in the church when the apostles had to build this religion that we have. Jesus didn't give them a blueprint for how the religion should look, what the rules would be. He lived and died for us and rose. That's what he did. He taught about how to live a beautiful life with his words and with his actions, and he healed people and spoke up for the underdogs. That's what he did, but he didn't tell them how to have a religion. So this is what the apostles had to do. And they were Jewish people that were starting something new, developing on a religion that they already had, but that no longer perfectly fit what they wanted for their lives. So they had to face things like, okay, in this new religion where Christ is the center, do we have to go to the temple anymore? The big temple in Jerusalem, is that something that is a part of the religion or isn't it? And they decided, well, it can't be, because Christ already gave his blood for us. The temple's all about blood offerings. We don't need those anymore. And besides, that means the religion would have to be based in Jerusalem, because you have to be able to go to the temple. So, all right, the temple is not part of this. Okay. But then the next question came up, kind of an awkward one. Do you need to be circumcised to be in this religion? Is that essential? It made sense in the Jewish religion that was a key way of knowing who you were. Is that essential in this religion? Not everything can be essential. So they had to figure out what is essential and what isn't. What is a constitutive part of this religion, and what is a detail that may, if we're not careful, get in the way of the big picture? So now, jump to May 8th, 2025, and try, if you can, to imagine what it felt like to be Pope Leo that afternoon, mourning for us. Can you imagine when he realized, I've been elected the Pope, and there's 40,000 people outside, and they want me to come out on the balcony and tell them what is essential. Whatever I say in this 2-minute greeting, they're going to use for headlines all over the world. I'm going to set the tone for everything. And I've got about 15 minutes before I have to go out there. What am I going to say that's essential? Imagine that. What would you do? I wondered, was he thinking back to his times in Peru? Was he thinking back to his classes at Villanova? Would you have been thinking of what you learned in your Catholic school when you were young and think, what is essential? Can I go back to Sister Roberta's class and decide what's essential? And he probably ran all of that through his head, like his life flashed before his eyes. Imagine if you were in that position and you had 15 minutes to compose yourself to tell the world what was the most important thing ever. Pope Francis was very clear what he felt was essential. Early in his papacy, he said that what is essential for the church is to stop the bleeding. This is what he meant. He said, and you might remember this, the world, he said, is like a field hospital after a battle. Everyone's wounded. Everyone's bleeding from the battle. And he said, there's shrapnel that's affected everybody. And you might not know that because some of the people are especially beautiful or rich or they're famous. And you think, well, life's easy for them. And he said, no, it's hard for everyone. Everyone's been wounded in the battle. And he said, our job as a church is to stop the bleeding. We have to bandage people's wounds. That's what's most essential. We give them something to eat, we stop their bleeding, and we put them under the blanket of God. And then he talked about that in big ways and small throughout the rest of his time as the Pope. Before the conclave started, you may remember all the speculation that was in the news. Do you remember some of the things that they said? They said, who is this next Pope going to be who's going to take the church leadership as his responsibility? And they said, I remember some of the things that they were saying. Whoever it is, he's going to have to be very good at understanding people. He's going to have to meet people where they are, because that's a big job that affects the whole world. I heard some other people say, he has to be diplomatic so that he's not so different from Pope Francis that people get whiplash. There's got to be some kind of a gradual transition from Pope Francis to him. I heard some people say, whoever this is better be tough. And one of the things that I heard them say was, Rome can chew you up and spit you out. Whoever this is needs to have experience in Rome, they said, because the bureaucracy in the church there is big. And I'll never forget that phrase, chew you up and spit you out. Imagine that being on your job description. I think it's interesting for us to go back to when these readings were chosen. When Rome became the headquarters of the church, it wasn't chosen because of the pasta, nor was it chosen because it's a beautiful city, and it wasn't chosen because it's a holy city. It was chosen because it was the home of the emperor. It was the head of the empire. It was the headquarters of Caesar, who killed Jesus. So it was the ground zero place of getting chewed up and spit out. We know that the first pope lived there. Peter and Paul were the ones that went there, and Peter, our first pope, got chewed up and spit out by Rome. They crucified him upside down. They still are careful with priests today, you know. When we're first ordained, they never give us a church right away. Have you noticed that? We always go to be an assistant or a parochial vicar. Because if you became a pastor right away, you have to face controversy, you have to make some hard decisions, you have to have conflict. And they don't want the young priest to get chewed up and spit out. So imagine, all of that's in the background, and Pope Leo comes out on the balcony, and he says, "Peace be with you all." That's what he started with. The first thing is for all of us to be unified. Peace and unity. He chose a motto that's since been established. His motto, his papal motto is, all are one in the one Lord. That's what he's going to build his papacy on. It sounds a lot like Jesus. So the question is, if for Pope Leo, the essential things to begin with are unity and peace, what are the essential things for you and for me? What does it look like to be a follower of Jesus? How do we know that we are? I don't know if this is the last word on what's essential, but I will say that as I prayed about this week, it was clear to me one of the things that's essential is that when people meet us, we remind them in some way of Jesus. That's how you know that you're with a follower of Jesus, if the followers remind someone of Jesus. If we remind people of Caesar, that would be bad. We don't want to remind people of Caesar. We want to remind people of Jesus. We want to be more Catholic than we are Roman, if you know what I mean, as a way of saying it. Catholics can never remind people of Caesar and still be good Catholics, but all of us ought to remind people of Jesus. That's the way we know that we're on the right path. So this week, what would be on your list of the essentials? What about this faith is the key, is the cornerstone, is the bedrock? How would you say to live in the footsteps of Jesus is best done by us today? We know that although Pope Leo lives in Rome, he's not trying to walk in the emperor's shoes. He's walking in the shoes of the fishermen. And like the first Peter, he's trying to be like Jesus. For him, that's essential. What's essential for you and for me?